Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. God has given us unlimited treasures in His Word. Every time we open it, we can discover a new treasure or admire an old one. What will we find today? Here's Carla Early with Treasure Hunt in the Word.
Have you ever been in a dark, difficult place in your life, and God has given you a verse to cling to that reminded you that He remained in control? I've shared some of those in my life, but today I'd like to share a story about a missionary in the Middle East. He and his wife followed God to a Muslim-controlled country, knowing the risks. For years, they showed love and shared the gospel there. They'd been threatened and even shot at, but they always saw the Lord protecting them. Then one day, he was arrested and suddenly faced a life sentence. He said he always thought that God would give his children special grace, strength, and peace of His presence in that situation like he faced. Instead, he felt abandoned, unloved, and forgotten. His prayers seemed to bounce off the ceiling. He experienced what one church father called the dark night of the soul. His wife, who they'd originally arrested but later released, chose to stay in the country and work toward his release instead of fleeing to safety, as many encouraged her to do. In the few times they allowed her to visit her husband, she saw his dark discouragement and depression, and searched the scriptures for encouraging verses to help him. The one she brought to him that he said he clung to for the rest of his stay was Isaiah 50, verse 10. It gives 3 questions, then some advice. It asks, "Who among you fears the Lord?" Now the missionary could have held up his hand. His life had been fully given over to furthering God's kingdom. He knew and honored the Lord. Who obeys the voice of his servant? Again, the missionary could confidently claim that he had obeyed God wholeheartedly in moving his family to a dangerous place and spreading the gospel in spite of threats. But the 3rd question kind of took him off guard. Who walks in darkness and has no light? Normally you would think that only people who don't know the Lord walk in darkness, right? After all, Jesus is the light of the world, and if you walk with Him, you're in the light. No confusion, no darkness, no gray areas. Well, that's not exactly correct. Remember, all those prophets in the Old Testament were killed for speaking God's truth. Jeremiah said, "He has led me and made me walk in darkness, not in light." Even the psalmist talks about walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Yet he claimed his shepherd kept him from fear, and he felt comfort of God's presence. This missionary did not feel that comforting presence. So what should he do? The verse went on to tell him how to respond. It says, "Let him trust in the name of the Lord and rely upon his God." The name of the Lord would be the sum of all of God's characteristics. He could trust that his God was sovereign, in control of his situation. He was compassionate. His God could feel his struggles and empathize with him. His God was loving. God was allowing this because of His love somehow, even though the missionary couldn't see it. His God was all-powerful. God had the power to get him out. Hope was not lost. His God was Savior, Deliverer, and Redeemer. He was the same God who rescued Daniel from the lion's den and released Peter from prison. He wasn't a faraway God, but present with His people. Despite how the missionary felt, he was to trust who God is and rely on Him. This verse didn't change his circumstances, but clinging to it changed his outlook and his attitude. And eventually he was freed from prison and had an amazing testimony for the Lord. Perhaps you feel like you could raise your hand to those 3 questions too. You've lived your life in the fear of the Lord and obeyed Him, yet you're in a dark place, feeling alone, confused, frustrated, and seeing no way out, not feeling like God cares. I was there a few years ago, and I totally agree with Isaiah 50, verse 10. The only way out is to trust in the name of the Lord. Cling to what you know about Him, not your feelings, and rely on Him to get you through. Maybe you know someone who's feeling this way, and you can share this verse with them to encourage them in their walk with the Lord.
You can contact us at treasurehuntintheword@gmail.com. We'd love to hear the treasures God has given you through His Word. You can listen to other episodes on our website, which you can find in the description below. Thank you for listening, and remember, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.